Li Mu's soul pierced through the world of cultivating immortals, living a peaceful and comfortable life by farming in the Qingxuan Sect, not fighting or fighting, relying on a few acres of spiritual fields, cultivating spiritual flowers, cultivating spiritual grass, refining weapons, and making talismans. When the sect was in trouble, Li Mu was forced to take action, and the disciples of the sect realized that there was still a sect ancestor in the sect. Keywords of the novel. Goudao Cultivates Immortality, starting from farming without pop-ups. Goudao Cultivates Immortality, starting from farming. Download the complete TXT collection, Goudao Cultivates Immortality, starting from farming. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Zongmen Farming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Zongmen Farming, Worm Aphid, Larval. First Order Demon Worm, Level. Level 1, Skill. Acid Spray, Enchanting Spirit Devouring Element. Staring at the demonic insect larvae attached to the spiritual rice plant, Li Mu furrowed his brows. Looking at it, Lingdao will mature and harvest in about 15 days, but now I have discovered aphid larvae. If I don't remove them quickly, months of hard work will be in vain. However, how to completely eliminate pests is a challenge. Li Mu quickly ran into the wooden house by the field, rummaged through boxes and cabinets, and found a book called Spiritual Plants and Insect Control 100 Directions. He quickly flipped through it. Midges, green flies. With it, aphids. Li Mu flipped through a few pages and quickly found a solution to deal with aphids. The worm aphid is a type of pest that emerges day and night. The eggs buried underground will hatch when the spiritual plant is about to mature, and accelerate their growth by sucking on the marrow of the spiritual plant. If it is fast, it can pass the fragile juvenile period in 7 days. The aphids in their infancy can be killed with venom and the phantom flame formation. Growing aphids can be quite troublesome, and can only be killed using individual techniques such as Jin Yuan Ji, Qi Yan Dan, Han Bing Ji, Sword Qi Hua Si, etc., one by one. If aphids enter the mature stage and complete pupation, it becomes even more difficult to deal with. A group of pupillized tooth worms need to build a foundation and cultivate skills in order to kill them. The method of killing aphids during the mature stage is not recorded in the Spiritual Plant Insect Control 100 prescriptions. However, this has nothing to do with Li Mu. He has only completed the cultivation of the second level of Qi refining, and it is unknown when he will build the foundation. Thinking that he couldn't even deal with a juvenile insect, Li Mu felt a bit heavy. Planting a field is so troublesome, these days are too difficult, sigh. Li Mu focused his attention on a blurred light spot in his field of vision. The next second, an interface similar to game character attributes was zoomed in and presented clearly. Next to the character attributes, there was an item column with 64 storage compartments, 7 or 8 of which had already been used, containing miscellaneous items such as the dark iron sword, water bag, porcelain bottle, and so on. Character. Li Mu, gender. Male, Shouyuan. 17 out of 85, spirit root. 5 elements miscellaneous spirit root, genius. Identify all spirits, plant spirits to absorb, cultivation. Refining gas level 2, 108/1000, skill. Qingmu decision, yellow level lower level, level 3, 125/3000, 18 root sword playing decision, yellow level middle level, level 2, 402/1000. Skills. Clear wind and rain calling technique, level 2. 287/1000, dust washing technique, level 2. 541/1000, swordsmanship, beginner. 38 out of 100, rune making technique, beginner. 37/100. This is Li Mu's personal attributes after inheriting the original owner. The original owner's conditions are really poor. Li Mu is not from this world, but from Blue Star. He died suddenly due to frequent overtime and staying up late to work, and his soul pierced into this terrifying world of cultivation. Li Mu quickly accepted this identity and replaced Zhao Huairen, who died inexplicably. After all, in the original world, Li Mu was just a hard-working young man carrying a monthly supply of 20,000 months, repeating the 996 routine day after day, diligent and fearless of being laid off. Now, his soul is worn as a miscellaneous disciple of the Immortal Cultivation Sect, and he is carrying a golden finger similar to a game panel, opening up a brand new life, which can be considered an unexpected joy. However, the death of the original owner Zhao Huairen was somewhat mysterious, and after Li Mu took over, there was a hint of unease in his heart. At present, the most urgent thing is to solve the pest infestation. Otherwise, if there is an accident in Lingtian and the tenant cannot be paid, one will definitely be punished by the sect and even expelled from Qingxuan Sect. Li Mu put the books in the wooden cabinet, then locked the courtyard door and went to the nearest market in Qingyan town to purchase insecticides. Qingxuan Sect is a prominent sect with control over thousands of Lingshan. There are hundreds of true disciples under the sect, thousands or even tens of thousands of inner disciples, tens of thousands of outer disciples, and millions of miscellaneous disciples. Above the true disciples, there are also Elder Jin Dan, Master Yuanying, Elder Taishang, and Ancestor Huashan, with a proper pyramid structure. And he is just a miscellaneous disciple at the bottom of the pyramid, renting spiritual fields from the sect, planting spiritual rice, and being exploited by the sect. No. It should be contributing to the strengthening of the main sector. It was about 3 or 4 miles from Lingtian to Qingyan town, and Li Mu rushed all the way to Qingyan town in just 15 minutes. However, the sand and soil were flying all the way, very disheveled, unlike the miscellaneous disciples who had learned swordsmanship in the 6th and 7th layers of qi refining. They were able to fly swordsmanship for a short distance, fast and graceful, which made Li Mu truly envious. Entering the town, a broken spirit. Li Mu was about to enter the town when he was stopped by a guard who collected city fees. Li Mu couldn't bear to take out a spirit stone the size of a nail cap from his pocket. 10 broken spirits are equivalent to 1 inferior spirit stone. 1 inferior spirit stone can buy 10 kilograms of spirit rice, which is enough to cover his meal expenses for a few days. It's really dark. Go in. If you don't stay in the hotel, you're not allowed to stay overnight in the town. The guard snatched the broken spirit and glanced at Li Mu, sternly reminding him. Understood. Li Mu nodded and walked into Qingyan town. The flat bluestone road surface and the small shops along the street are somewhat dilapidated and in operation. In addition to the activities of miscellaneous disciples and external disciples, there are also some affiliated families of the sect operating in Qingyan town under the control of Qingxuan Sect. The streets are lined with shops, spiritual rice shops, spiritual beast shops, spiritual tool shops, miscellaneous stores, inns, etc. All kinds of shops, although small in scale, are very complete. Li Mu only had 3 inferior spirit stones and a few broken spirits on his body. Apart from purchasing poison insect liquid, he couldn't afford anything else, so he went straight to the spirit plant shop. Boss, do you have a poison insect liquid that can poison aphids for sale? Li Mu walked into the Lingji shop and asked the shop owner directly. Yes, 1 bottle of 5 fragmented spirit. How many bottles do you need? The shop owner quickly replied. How much spiritual field can a bottle of poison insect liquid irrigate? Asked Li Luo. Dilute with 100 times more spiritual water and eliminate pests on 3 acres without hesitation, the shop owner replied. Can I buy half a bottle? Li Mu asked in a deliberative tone. He only rented 1 acre of spiritual field and couldn't use a whole bottle. The shop owner was speechless and gave Li Mu a disdainful glance before firmly refusing. I can't sell it, I have to buy the whole bottle. Take a bottle. Li Mu reluctantly decided and continued, do you have any spiritual seeds for sale? Take a look. That's it over there, let's see for ourselves. The shop owner pointed to the wooden frame in front of the container where spiritual seeds were placed. There was a wooden board with dozens of small compartments, each containing a spiritual plant seed. Li Mu glanced over and saw that his innate powers, spiritual consciousness, were effective in all things. The information of spiritual seeds was presented one by one. First order, Kuei Yen Hua, first order Ice Spirit Grass, first order Colorful Spirit Flower, first order Wu Shuetang, first order Blood Spirit Ganoderma. Dozens of spiritual plant seeds, at a glance, are almost all first-order spiritual plants. However, Li Mu can also understand that there are not many good things in the small town, and high-level spiritual plant seeds need to be bought at the spiritual plant store in the county town. Oh, boss, these seeds are all withered. Li Mu found something good and pointed to the end where dozens of different withered seeds were placed on the grid. The shop owner gave Li Mu a displeased glance and said, "I have long eyes, so you don't need to remind me. Boss, these withered seeds can't be used anymore. Why don't you give them to me at a cheaper price?" Li Mu chuckled and suggested. The shop owner suddenly became alert. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Spiritual Plant Seeds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Spiritual Plant Seeds. The owner of the spiritual plant shop extended his index finger and poked back and forth into the withered seed grid, selecting the usable spiritual seeds. This grid is usually used to store damaged spiritual seeds. The owner of the spiritual plant shop picked and chose, but did not find any valuable spiritual seeds. He was also afraid of being careless and sold the valuable spiritual seeds, causing him to be conflicted. "Boss, I plan to recycle these withered seeds and feed them to chickens." "There's no need for this, right?" Li Mu chuckled and joked. Upon hearing this, the owner of the Lingji shop suddenly lost his temper and said, "Take a piece of broken spirit." Li Mu nodded with a smile and happily paid a piece of broken spirit, taking away all the withered seeds in the grid. Watching Li Mu leave, the owner of the spiritual plant shop felt reluctant and felt like he had lost money. However, he did not select the ones that could be used for those withered seeds. Can it be difficult? That kid really turned waste into treasure. Leaving the Lingji store, Li Mu turned into an empty alley to inspect the harvest. Soul Wood Spirit Seed, Grade 4th Level Spirit Wood, Characteristic. Contains the soul power of the wood genus, the vitality of the spiritual wood, and can cultivate soul wood seedlings. Status. Lack of soul power, no spiritual manifestation, soul wood spirit seed. It requires the power of the soul to be infused in order for the spirit seed to be nurtured. Growth requirements. It needs to be planted in a place where yin is gathered, and can be grown in 100 years. The 4th level soul wood, which blooms in 10 years and produces soul baby fruits in 10 years, can be used to refine soul pills. The soul wood material is one of the main materials for refining soul puppets. Wearing the 4th level soul wood heart can strengthen the spirit and nourish the soul. Black snake vine spirit seed, grade 3rd level spirit vine, characteristics. Vines are highly poisonous, can bear snake fruit for 100 years, and can cultivate snake vine seedlings. Status. Closed embryo, reduced activity. Black snake vine. It needs to be watered with snake and python blood in order to cultivate spiritual seeds. Growth needs. It needs to be contaminated with the scent of snake and monster at least level 3, and can only grow with it. It takes 50 years to mature, 5 years to bloom, and 5 years to produce snake spirit fruit. The snake spirit fruit can be used to refine snake feeding pills. It is a purifying blood vessel and enhancing strength for dragons and pythons. Black snake vine comes with highly toxic substances and can be used to refine highly toxic equipment. Li Mu quickly picked out 2 withered spiritual seeds from dozens of withered seeds. With the help of his innate ability to recognize all spirits, the two still active spiritual seeds displayed their original attributes. Unfortunately, in order to gather in a place of shade and be accompanied by high-level snake monsters, the planting conditions and growth environment of the two spiritual species are very harsh, and Li Mu cannot meet their needs. These two spirit seeds cannot be used for a short time. Li Mu sighed and stored them in the storage compartment. One day, he may have the opportunity to plant them or sell them to exchange for minor training resources. The remaining dead seeds were all dead. Li Mu casually threw them in the corner of the wall, walked out of the dark alley, and continued to wander around the market in Qingxuan town, hoping to pick them up again. The Qingxuan town market is located on the main street of the entire town, with various shops on both sides. In remote areas, there are hundreds of scattered repair booths. The scattered repair workers set up a stall with a piece of cloth and a wooden table, on which various commodities are placed, including spiritual grains, spiritual fruits, ferocious animal meat, spiritual swords, runes, leather armor, etc., all of which are dazzling. Bargaining, introducing products, greeting customers, etc., all kinds of voices gather together, and people come and go, creating a lively atmosphere. Li Mu scanned through each stall and did not find any valuable high-level spiritual objects. Even if he identified some spiritual objects with slightly higher levels, Li Mu asked about the price for a moment, but his plan fell through. These scattered cultivators who come out to set up stalls have been wandering around the market all year round, each shrewd to the death. At the bottom, they don't have much good things on hand, and their family secrets are all used to deceive people. Anything of some value is marked with high prices, making it difficult for them to get it. A rare visit to the market, Li Mu spent 5 pieces of broken spirits and bought a few pieces of talisman paper to try making talismans. He also used 3 pieces of broken spirits and bought half a pound of monster meat to improve his diet. After buying these things, Li Mu dared not continue to wander, only a few spirit stones were left to live on. Half an hour later, Li Mu returned to his rented yard and, following the instructions of the owner of the spiritual plant shop, prepared insect repellent to poison aphids. He poured half a bottle of black gum insect repellent into 2 wooden buckets filled with clean water, stirred well, and emitted a pungent odor. Li Mu picked up a wooden bucket filled with black poisonous insect water with a wooden pole and struggled to walk to the spiritual field. Then, the wooden spoon scooped up the insecticide and began to kill the pests. Li Muling checked the rice plants one by one, specifically looking for the ling rice plants attached by aphids and watering them down. The poison insect poison has a significant effect. One by one, the larvae of the aphid shed from the spirit rice plant, and their bodies twitched a few times before dying in pain. After an hour, Li Mu finally eradicated all the worms and aphids in the Lingtian. Oh my! My waist! This job is really not done by anyone. Li Mu supported his back with both hands and couldn't help but scream in agony. However, his voice was filled with joy, and this insect infestation was safely solved. Li Mu rested for a moment, holding 2 empty wooden barrels and standing next to the spiritual field. He pinched the formula with both hands and condensed his limited spiritual power. He silently used the technique of clearing the wind and summoning rain to nourish the water and spiritual power of the spiritual rice plants that had been damaged by insects in the spiritual field. Clear wind and rain summoning technique successfully released, proficiency +1. A text prompt popped out of the virtual screen in front of Li Mu, and a weak spiritual power was successfully released with both hands. In the next moment, a faint spiritual power whirlwind blew up above the spiritual field, gathering the spiritual power around it, and finally turning into small drops of rain, sinking into the spiritual field. From the beginning of the wind to the fall of spiritual rain, it lasted for about 30 to 40 breaths before the wind stopped and the rain stopped. The spiritual rice in the spiritual field sways with the wind, as if accusing that this spiritual rain comes and goes quickly, unable to meet their needs, one by one eagerly awaiting nourishment. Li Mu glanced at the Lingtian, and the properties of the Lingdao plant were presented in a virtual light curtain. White Jade Spirit Rice, Mature Stage, Level. First Level Spiritual Plant, Characteristics. Lingmi has a fragrant aroma and grows rapidly. Status. Mature fruiting period, lack of spiritual water irrigation, poor growth status. White Jade Spirit Rice. It can be planted in lower-grade spirit fields. Growth requirements. It has sufficient fertility and spiritual soil. It matures in 4 months, blooms in 1 month, and bears fruit in 1 month. White Jade Spirit Rice can be used to cook spirit rice and is a low-level spiritual food that supplements spiritual power. Li Mu's Blush. It was a lack of accomplishments, and he could not practice the cool wind called rain skill at home. The experienced spiritual planter next door, Mr. Zhang, is skilled in the technique of refreshing the wind and summoning rain, and can continuously drop 200 breath of spiritual rain. Compared to him, he is far behind. Fortunately, Li Mu is still young and has recovered quickly enough. The duration is not enough, so the number of times can make up for it. Li Mu took a short rest, regained some spiritual power, and continued to release the technique of refreshing wind and summoning rain. Once, twice, 3 times. In an hour, Li Mu released 7 times the technique of refreshing the wind and summoning rain, meeting the spiritual rain needs of the rice plants. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Rune Making Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Rune Making Technique. Completing the watering of the spiritual field, night quietly falls. Li Mu tidied up his farm tools and returned to the wooden house by the field. He walked to a stove made of bluestone bricks in the corner of the yard and began to cook spiritual rice. Soon, the blazing stove flushed Li Mu's young face. The Lingtian rented from Zongmen is located halfway up the mountain, with a small wooden house courtyard built against the mountain. It has 1 large and 2 small rooms, 3 rooms, and also comes with a courtyard that can practice swordsmanship. Li Mu has reviewed the lease agreement and found that this wooden house is 6 zhang long and 2 zhang 33 wide, which is approximately 150 square meters in square meters. Not far from the entrance of the courtyard is a pond, next to which is the spiritual field of the sect. It is surrounded by mountains and water, full of spiritual natural atmosphere. The trees are tall and dense, the scenery is beautiful, and there is no industrial pollution. It is extremely suitable for rural life, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, without 996 or mortgage pressure. This kind of rural life should not be too comfortable. If it weren't for the hard work of farming, occasional ferocious beasts running down the mountains and forests, and occasional evil spirits and ghosts appearing at night, Li Mu would not have been dissatisfied with this pastoral life. However, without it, this world is full of crises, powerful monsters, ghosts, evil spirits, and demonic cultivators who devour flesh and blood, plunder spirits, and refine human corpses. Humans are no longer the supreme spirits of all things, but exist like pigs and sheep. In the same world, there are powerful cultivators who can live for hundreds or even thousands of years, fly to heaven and earth, move mountains and seas, and have everything they can do. For a little benefit, they meet with swords and swords, kill and seize treasures, destroy corpses and ruins, and kill people like wildfire. The original owner's death was unclear, perhaps caused by an evil spirit in Insha. As Li Mu looked at the stove, various thoughts came to his mind. In this world, personal strength is crucial to life and death, and it is necessary to quickly improve one's cultivation. After a tiring day of farming and pest control, Li Mu returned to the yard and did not relax. He waited for the spiritual rice and monster meat to be cooked, and the steaming aroma wafted out. He couldn't wait to start eating. Li Mu scooped a spoonful of steaming white rice from a large iron pot. The crystal-clear rice grains emitted a hot and delicate aroma, with a fragrant aroma that caught people's hearts. Li Mu couldn't wait for a moment. He filled his pottery bowl and eagerly started eating it, shouting loudly as he was scalded. As soon as the hot spiritual rice enters the mouth, it is fragrant and glutinous, sweet and delicious. The fragrance of the clear spiritual rice turns into a warm stream, wandering through the meridians of the body, making the whole body warm, like a dry river that has been exposed to sweet dew for a long time. The spiritual energy washes and cleanses the whole body. Paired with a large mouthful of monster meat, the meat flavor is full of happiness. Li Mu wolfed down the whole pot of spiritual rice and half a pound of monster meat in less than a quarter of an hour, still licking the corners of his mouth with satisfaction. The whole body was warm and comfortable. Li Mu quickly put down his dishes and sat on the ground, his eyes slightly closed, practicing Aomu-ju. Aoki-ju is a wooden cultivation technique that only has a lower level of yellow grade. It condenses wooden spiritual energy and has slightly weaker attack ability. However, it is very suitable for assisting the growth of spiritual plants. The original owner's ambition was to become a spiritual plant master, and Li Mu had no choice but to continue practicing this technique. Eating spiritual rice and monster meat generates a large amount of spiritual warmth in the body, which nourishes the body and gradually dissipates over time. Li Mu took this opportunity to cultivate the Qingmu-ju. The spiritual energy in the meridians flowed rapidly, gathering the warm and scattered spiritual energy in his body. First week, second week, third week. As time passed by bit, Li Mu exerted all his strength to execute the Qingmu-ju. With the spiritual power of spiritual rice and monster meat, his cultivation effect was 3 or 4 times that of regular cultivation. An hour passed in the blink of an eye, and Li Mu, who had been practicing with his eyes closed, suddenly felt a faint pain in his meridians. He had no choice but to stop this practice. Qingmu was only a yellow-level technique, and the number of meridians cultivated was limited, resulting in a short time limit for each week's practice. After reaching the 10th week, the meridians have already received insufficient spiritual blessings. If one cultivates the Xian-level cultivation method, the meridian roots of Xingong will be more precise than the Huang-level cultivation method. Xingong can last for at least half an hour in a week, and the condensed spiritual power and true elements will become stronger. Over time, the accumulation of strength and differences in cultivation techniques ultimately result in a gap between heaven and earth. Li Mu sighed and silently looked at the character attribute bar on the virtual screen. On the first week of Qingmu-ju operation, Qingmu-ju proficiency, +1, spiritual energy nourishment, cultivation progress +3, Qingmu-ju runs for the second week, Qingmu-ju proficiency, +1, spiritual energy nourishes, cultivation progress +2. The log prompt below the character attribute bar displays the results of this cultivation. This time of cultivation, the proficiency of Qingmu-ju has increased by 7 points, and the cultivation progress has increased by 16 points. Based on this efficiency, we will continue to cultivate, and it will take about 2 months to break through the 3rd layer of qi refining. However, this is in the case of daily spiritual rice paired with monster meat. He doesn't have so many spiritual stones, he eats a lot of fish and meat every day. Alas! These days are too difficult. Li Mu sighed and quickly tidied up the dishes on the table, preparing to make talismans and earn spiritual stones. Relying solely on farming cannot satisfy his cultivation. There is a familiar panel, and if the level of talisman making can be raised, there will be a stable source of future cultivation resources. In the wooden bedroom, the candle flickers in the center of the wooden table. Li Mu sat in front of the wooden table, holding a wolf fur talisman pen in his right hand, focusing on drawing runes on the paper. The hand holding the pen had weak spiritual power, maintaining a continuous and stable output, while also ensuring the fluency of the drawn runes. Blank talisman paper, made from low-level monster skins, peeled multiple layers, and processed through secret techniques, is thin and light. Li Mu drew runes with small hearts and wings, afraid that the rune pen would puncture the rune paper. At the same time, he also wanted to ensure that the ink on the tip of the pen was even and that the spiritual power output could be portrayed within the runes. Suddenly, with a pop sound, the talisman paper ignited out of thin air, startling Li Mu. Li Mulian jumped and kicked, and only then did he stamp out the burning talisman paper with his feet, causing his heart to thump fiercely. Damn it, it's too scary. Making a talisman to ward off evil can still ignite a fire. What was the situation just now? It seems that there is a crooked rune line drawing. Because there was a mistake in this area, causing a spiritual conflict. The lines in front were all drawn correctly, so the spiritual power was successfully output. Extinguish the burning talisman paper, and Li Mu compares it with the Lingfu painting strategy, to summarize the mistakes made in the talisman making just now. In the original world, Li Mu was a senior programmer who was skilled in summarizing failures and logical reasoning. This time, he quickly identified the key reason for the spontaneous combustion of rune paper. Summarizing the experience of failure, Li Mu felt that he had taken another big step towards the success of the talisman making. Li Mu took out a new piece of talisman paper and tried again. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Plant Spirit Extraction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 5. Eliminating Ghosts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 6. Collecting 3 to 5 extra Dous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Collecting 3 to 5 extra Dous. The next day, early in the morning, Li Mu is handling the rice ears harvested yesterday in the yard. Place a wooden roller in the center of the yard and lay a large piece of burlap. Take a handful of rice ears and forcefully throw them on top, causing the rice grains and spirit rice plants to detach and fall onto the burlap. So repeated. Around noon, Li Mu harvested 7 large boxes of rice, weighing about 2,000 pounds. After removing all the husks from 2,000 kilograms of rice, one can harvest approximately 1,000 to 300 kilograms of spiritual rice. At that time, one should pay the ancestral rent of 700 kilograms of spiritual rice, and the remaining spiritual rice will eventually belong to oneself. This harvest is quite good. Under the careful care of Li Mu, 1 acre of spiritual field has produced an additional 3 to 400 kilograms of rice. Other spiritual planters, who can harvest 1,000 kilograms of spiritual rice per acre of spiritual field, are considered good. Some spiritual planters are too focused on daily cultivation and neglect the care of the spiritual field, resulting in a harvest of less than 700 kilograms of spiritual rice, and will even have to post it upside down to the sect's spiritual stone. However, Qingxuan Sect did not hold the leaks below too harshly. Renting the spiritual fields was paid annually, and the spiritual planters rented the spiritual fields. After planting a season of spiritual rice, they had 6 months left to plant other spiritual plants and increase their income. After finishing lunch, Li Mu rested for a moment before starting to husk the rice. In the rural areas of the former world, farmers husk rice by first drying the grains to remove moisture, and then placing the rice in sturdy containers and compacting them with wooden sticks to separate the grain walls and husks. Alternatively, using a drying machine, the rice grains are rolled and husked. In this world, the process of peeling off the shell of lingu is somewhat different. The value of lingu lies in the spiritual energy contained within it. Exposure lingu to sunlight will cause the spiritual energy in water inside to evaporate, which is not worth the loss. Li Mu took a closed wooden grain husking box and poured dozens of kilograms of spiritual rice into it. Then, he covered the box and injected spiritual power into the stone formation of the box to activate the shell stripping method inside the box. The grain husking box hummed for a while, and a large amount of husk powder gushed out from the nozzle. When the shell removal box stopped working and the lid was opened, there were more than 10 pounds of plump particles, full of spiritual energy, and crystal clear spirit rice inside. Li Mu quickly poured more than 10 pounds of spirit rice into a leather bag, closed the bag mouth, and prevented the spiritual energy from evaporating. Li Mu was tirelessly busy removing shells from the lingu, weighing over 10 pounds at a time. 7 large frames, over 2,000 pounds of lingu rice, after removing the husks, were packed in 12 animal skin bags. There was also a portion of lingmi that was not packed in animal bags. Li Mu cleared a water tank to store lingmi, and also filled 2 rice jars, which would be enough for him to eat for about half a year. The amount of shelled rice was about 100 pounds more than Li Mu had estimated himself. After paying the rent for 700 kilograms of lingmi from the sect, leaving a portion for oneself to eat, and then selling a portion of lingmi, one can probably sell it for 30.40 yuan. After working hard for half a year, I only earned such a small amount of spiritual stones. The profession of Ling Jifu really has no future. Unless it is possible to rent the top-grade spiritual field of the sect and plant alchemy elixirs, the profit can only go up. However, if you want to rent the superior spiritual and medicinal fields of Qingxuan Sect, you not only need to improve your cultivation, but also need to participate in the sect competition, pass the competition assessment, and advance from a miscellaneous disciple to a formal external disciple. Li Mu moved 12 bags of spiritual rice into the warehouse, and tomorrow, he will take 7 bags of spiritual rice to pay the land rent at the residence of Qingxuan Sect in Qing'an Town. The animal skin bags used to install the spiritual rice were distributed by Qingxuan Sect, and 1 bag filled exactly 100 pounds. Looking at the small warehouse filled with rice bags, Li Mu wiped the sweat off his forehead, his face full of joy, and he didn't feel any fatigue. In the world of cultivating immortals, Li Mu has abundant spiritual power. His body, which now has 5 layers of qi refining, is countless times stronger than that of ordinary people in the past. After working hard all day on farm work, Li Mu did not feel any discomfort in his body. After cleaning the yard and tidying up, Li Mu returned to the house and started looking for books to read. Li Mufan looked at the basic chapter of Lingji Husband, published by the sect, which introduced the suitable Lingji for continuing to be planted in the Lingtian after planting Lingji rice plants. Li Mu hesitated between the wind spirit grass and the green spirit fruit. Ijia foamling grass is a type of herbivorous spiritual plant that can be harvested after 3 months of planting and then sold as a spiritual livestock pasture in a sect. It is easy to manage, grows quickly, and does not delay the planting of the next season of spiritual rice. It is the choice of many spiritual planters. However, it is precisely because of this that foamling grass cannot be sold at a high price. 100 caddies is only 1 lower spirit, and 1 acre of spiritual field can produce 3,000 to 4,000 caddies, which is amazing. In addition, there is another issue. Planting wind spirit grass can damage the fertility of the spirit field. When planting spirit rice, it is necessary to put in a lot of effort to fertilize the spirit field. Changing to cooling fruit is different. Cooling fruit is also a first-order spiritual plant, but it is a fruit-type spiritual plant that has a longer growing season and takes 9 months. The mature fruit can be eaten directly or sold to wineries to refine cooling wine. It is a spiritual plant with high economic value, and can be sold for 1 piece per 3 or 4 pounds. Planting Chui Ling Guo will not damage the fertility of the spiritual field, but it will miss the season for planting ling rice. In addition, Chui Ling Guo is relatively delicate and difficult to manage. Many ling planters have planted it and have lost all their money. These 2 types of spiritual plants have their own advantages and disadvantages. Li Mu has been going through the basic chapter of the spirit plant man and cannot find a 3rd suitable spiritual plant for him to plant. There is a virtual panel available to view the attribute status of the cooling fruit. Li Mu is not afraid of not being able to pick the cooling fruit, and even if he doesn't hit the Ling Dao, he can still harvest a considerable amount of Lingshi. However, the effect of the talent divine power. Plant spirit absorption is too strong. Li Mu really hopes to continue improving his cultivation. If he plants wind spirit grass, he can harvest another wave of plant spirit 3 months later, which makes him very tempted. After weighing the pros and cons, Li Mu made a heartfelt decision and chose to plant Fengling grass. The world is too dangerous. It is most important to improve your accomplishments and strengthen your strength. If you can get enough awesome from Fengling grass, Li Mu plans to stop planting Lingdao, and continue to plant Fengling grass, or even rent a few acres of Lingtian to plant Fengling grass. In this way, one can harvest several more waves of cultivation each year. As for the spirit stones, if they are not enough, they can be earned by making talismans. The management requirements for planting wind spirit grass are slightly lower, and in the future, less time will be spent on the spirit field, which allows for more time constraints. With the improvement of proficiency, the success rate of making talismans will also increase, and higher level spiritual talismans can also be refined. In the future, one can definitely earn enough spiritual stones to pay rent. That's the decision. Li Mu pondered for a while, made up his mind, and prepared to plant Fengling grass. The next day, early in the morning, Li Mu pushed a pair of wooden unicycles and carried 10 generations of Lingmi to Qingxuan town. While paying the rent, he disposed of 3 other bags of Lingmi. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Accidental Leakage Detection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Accidental Leakage Detection. Qingxuan town, the residence of Qingxuan Sect, is located in the center of the town, the tallest and largest building. Along the way, Li Mu met many Lingji men who, like him, were pushing unicycles and wooden carts early to deliver Lingmi and pay rent. During the harvest season of Lingmi, the outer disciples of Qingxuan Sect will be sent down to maintain the order of Lingji men paying rent. No one dares to cause trouble at this time. Worms and aphids. I didn't pay attention to the appearance of worms and aphids. I suffered a disastrous harvest this time. Yeah. I only harvested 600 kilograms of Lingmi per acre of land, and after working hard for half a year, I still lost 10 pounds of Lingmi. Ah! Who isn't it? But without planting Lingmi, what else can we do? I will no longer be farming after terminating my lease. I heard that a Lingshi mine vein has been discovered in Qingping town next door and is currently recruiting people. I am planning to go and dig the Lingshi mine. Digging for spiritual mines. Entering a mining cave, it's easy to encounter earthly demons, evil, and I don't even know how to die. It's better to farm peacefully. This insect disaster is not small, and there will definitely be more aphids next year. Just be careful. While queuing up to pay the rent, Li Mu listened to the sad discussions of the spiritual cultivators around him, feeling inexplicably heavy. The sudden and large-scale outbreak of aphid infestation caused many spiritual planters to fail to detect it in advance, resulting in a significant loss of income for the spiritual rice. The spiritual planters sighed and some secretly shed tears with sadness. Li Mu silently stood in line, waiting to pay the rent, without intervening in their conversation. If it weren't for the help of the golden finger, Li Mu would have discovered the pest early on. Now, he would also be like them, frowning and suffering because the harvest was not enough to pay rent. Quickly, it was Li Mu's turn to pay the rent. The steward disciple opened the bag of Lingmi and checked it, and suddenly found that the quality of this batch of Lingmi was good. There are 3 bags of Lingmi left. You want to take them to the market for processing, right? Sell them to the sect. The steward disciple looked at Li Mu and asked forcefully. Ah. Sir, how do you calculate the price of this rice? Li Mu hesitated for a moment and quickly asked. I won't lose you, I'll charge according to the market price. The steward glanced at Li Mu with anger and instructed the younger brother beside him, Xiaozhou, give him 30 spirits and move the rice bags into the warehouse together. Great. The disciple named Xiaozhou took a spirit stone and handed it to Li Mu. Li Mu counted it for a moment, no more, no less, just 30 times more spiritual. 10 bags of Lingmi were all taken away by Qingxuan Sect. Li Mu relaxed and pushed an empty cart to the market, while also purchasing some supplies. When he arrived at the market and inquired about the price of lingmi, Li Mu wished he could slap himself a few times. It's a big loss. Due to the impact of aphid infestation, many spiritual planters have not harvested enough and instead have to purchase spiritual rice in the market to pay rent. Now, the price of white jade spiritual rice has risen by 2 pieces in the market, and according to this trend, the price of spiritual rice will continue to rise. Malagobi. Qingxuan Sect doesn't have a good thing. Except for me. Li Mu sighed and acknowledged the loss. The steward disciple's cultivation was in the later stage of qi refining, and he couldn't afford to provoke him. If he wanted to force the purchase of lingmi, he couldn't stop it. Boss, how do you sell wind spirit grass spirit seeds? Li Mu came to the spirit plant shop and asked the shop owner. 1 kilogram and 5 drops of spirit. The shop owner directly took out a prepared bag of spirit seeds from under the counter. Whenever the spirit rice harvest season pays rent, they sell wind spirit grass seeds. Can 1 kilogram of spiritual seed win 1 acre? Is the price too low? Li Mu hesitated and asked. After planting for half a year, he only got 30 lower spirits. He wished he could break a spiritual stone into 2 flowers. It's based on 1 acre of Ling Tian, and the price is indispensable. If you don't want it, you can't give it away. The owner of Lingji's shop glanced at Li Mu and said nonchalantly. Damn it. If it weren't for the entire Qingxuan town, this Lingji seed store, and the attitude of the store owner towards selling goods, Li Mu would definitely have thrown his arm and left. Helplessly, the entire Qingxuan town is almost under the control of Qingxuan Sect, and many industries are monopolized. For example, the trading of this spiritual seed is all cultivated by high-level spiritual planters in the sect. Many spiritual seeds being sold can only grow fruits and cannot be kept for breeding. Li Mu gritted his teeth and took out 5 lower spirits, bought a bag of wind spirit grass spiritual seeds, and turned around to leave the spiritual plant shop. Li Mu pushed a wooden cart and started strolling around the market. He spent 5 shreds of spirit, bought half a pound of spirit deer meat, bought a training suit with 2 strokes of spirit at a tailor's shop, and bought a few stacks of talisman paper at a spiritual talisman shop. All kinds of food and supplies were piled up on the cart. How do I sell this Dharma technique? Li Mu stopped at an old martial arts practitioner and asked, pointing to a tattered Dharma technique. Just now, while Li Mu was sweeping the scattered training booth, he was using his divine powers to recognize all kinds of spirits. He unexpectedly discovered a small leak that could be picked up. In an unremarkable book of finger power technique, there was actually a layer with a mysterious level technique hidden inside. Li Muqiang suppressed his excitement and asked the old Taoist selling martial arts for a price. 2 lower spirits. The old Taoist glanced at the book pointed out by Li Mu and replied. This cultivation method doesn't even rank high. 2 lower spirits are expensive, and I'll take 1 lower spirit. Li Mu habitually negotiated. The old Taoist hesitated for a moment. As Li Mu said, an ordinary martial arts book cannot sell for much, but with a lower spirit, the old Taoist was reluctant to sell it. Why don't you buy other cultivation techniques? This book can be considered a companion and I'll give it to you. The old Taoist thought for a moment and suggested. This old guy is so good at doing business. Li Mu thought for a moment and realized that in addition to the art of guarding against enemies, he also had the art of swordsmanship. It seemed that he should cultivate a certain technique, so that when encountering ghosts and spirits, he wouldn't be flustered. Do you have any fire spells? How do you sell them? Li Mu scanned the martial arts book on the stall again. Yes, this fire control technique and this fire condensation technique are all good enemy defense techniques. Each one only requires 20 spiritual strikes, and then a finger force technique. The old Taoist spirit was boosted and he quickly selected 2 techniques. All of them are yellow grade lower grade, let's use the Imperial Fire technique. 15 spirits. Li Mu swung his sword again, making a resounding sound. Give me something to earn. 19 spirits, take away the 2 books. The old Taoist looked sorrowful and begged for mercy. I only have 15 spirits left. If it doesn't work, I'll buy this book. Li Mu firmly refused. Add 2 more, add 2 lower spirits, 17 lower spirits. The old Taoist pleaded earnestly. Li Mu hesitated for a moment, but when he touched the spirit stone bag, his heart became fierce again and he opened it directly for him to see. In the end, the old Taoist was defeated by Li Mu's spirit stone bag, and with a gloomy expression, he followed up with 15 lower spirits, unwilling to deal with this poor ghost anymore. Li Mu silently took 2 martial arts books into his arms, pushed a wooden cart and left Qingxuan town cleanly. In the blink of an eye, he spent all 30 spirit stones selling spiritual rice. Next, he had to continue to work hard for a while and earn spiritual stones by drawing spiritual talismans. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Divine Consciousness Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Divine Consciousness Technique. Li Mu pushed the cart back and met old Zhang on the road. At this moment, he was harvesting spiritual rice in the spiritual field, bareheaded, revealing a thin, dark, wrinkled old man's body, sweating profusely. Mr. Zhang, you're busy. Do you want to hire me? Li Mu smiled and greeted Mr. Zhang, jokingly saying. Forget it. This time, the old man suffered a heavy blow from the pest infestation. Where did the spirit stone hire you? Zhang looked up at Li Mu with a worried expression on his face. Did you go to collect food? Did you buy so many things? Has your spiritual field not been affected by insects? Mr. Zhang looked at the things on the cart and asked strangely. I have also been affected, but the impact is not that significant, Li Mu explained awkwardly. You're really lucky. I'll be miserable. Qingxuan town may not be able to stay any longer, said old Zhang with envy, glancing at Li Mu and feeling resentful. Li Mu opened his mouth and didn't know how to comfort him. He was too busy and forgot to tell Mr. Zhang about the discovery of aphids. This whole thing is a bit sorry for him. Zhang Lao, where are you going? Li Mu followed with a sigh and asked with concern. After decades of cultivating immortality, everything turned out to be in vain. I now accept my fate. I plan to return to my hometown in the mortal world to retire. Zhang, the old man, showed a nostalgic expression on his face. After pausing for a moment, old Zhang looked at Li Mu and asked, after paying this year's rent, I plan to propose to Qingxuan Sect to terminate the lease of the ancestral land. Do you want my spiritual land? You've always envied me for my skilled technique of summoning rain and refreshing wind. As long as you help me rent this spiritual land, I'll teach you the experience of summoning rain and refreshing wind. The Lingtian of Qingxuan Sect is not meant to be returned if one wishes. One must find a tenant, sign a contract to bear the subsequent rent, and ensure stable income for the sect's land in order to safely withdraw. Otherwise, one would have to pay 2 or 3 times the rent penalty before withdrawing. Now, due to insect infestation, most spiritual planters have suffered heavy losses and are unwilling to continue renting ancestral land. Mr. Zhang wants to retire calmly, but he still lacks a successor. Li Mu, the neighbor, is undoubtedly the best candidate. Upon hearing Mr. Zhang's proposal, Li Mu was immediately moved. There is a gold finger panel that can observe the status of spiritual plants at any time. Li Mu is not afraid of losing spiritual stones from farming, he is worried about not having enough spiritual fields. Alright, now, you can arrange to plant both cooling fruit and foamling grass. Seeing that Li Mu had not responded for a long time, old Zhang became anxious and said, Zhao, what other conditions do you need? Don't keep silent. Li Mu was slightly stunned for a moment before realizing that he was calling the original owner. He quickly said, no problem, I have rented your spiritual field without any additional conditions. Thank you so much, you've been a big help to me. Old Zhang was overjoyed and thanked Li Mu gratefully. That's settled. I'll take care of the Ling Tian and go pay the rent tomorrow afternoon. You can come with me and handle the formalities casually. Mr. Zhang looked at Li Mu and couldn't wait to confirm this matter to avoid any accidents. Okay. Whenever you're free, just call me out. Li Mu smiled and nodded happily. After chatting for a while, Li Mu pushed the cart back to the yard, eager to check the mysterious level martial arts book. Take out the book of pointing power technique. Li Mu takes a pair of scissors, cuts open the interlayer of the last page, and slowly takes out the contents. It is a tattered yellow paper stained with blood, and the handwriting on the paper is still clear. Quenching Divine Decision, Remnants, Grade. Xian Level Top. Grade. Features. Refining Divine Souls and Strengthening Divine Consciousness. The first 3 layers of the technique of quenching the Divine Spirit are used to condense the Divine Soul and refine the Divine Consciousness upon entering the beginner's level of cultivation. Genius and Divine Ability. Identifying all spirits takes effect. Li Muxin happily looks at the prompts in the virtual light screen, quickly spreads out the yellow paper, and records the content of the Quenching Divine Determination technique. I have picked up a spiritual consciousness cultivation technique, although it only has the first 3 layers. However, spiritual consciousness is the dominant ability that only cultivators in the foundational realm can master. Although cultivators in the Qi refining period also have spiritual consciousness, it is very weak, mainly focused on condensing spiritual power, with true magical power. The spiritual consciousness cultivation technique is extremely rare, and no one in the Qi refining period has the energy to cultivate spiritual consciousness. However, Li Mu will not miss this opportunity. The benefits of strengthening and enhancing his divine sense are very obvious. Firstly, it can increase the power and distance of spells. Secondly, it can help refine weapons and symbols, improve his skills. Thirdly, he can use his divine sense to detect enemies. There are countless benefits to be gained. Heart and breath depend on each other. Embrace and guard the return to the original state, concentrate and enter stillness, integrate heart and qi, refine essence every day without moving the body, refine qi every day without moving the heart, refine spirit every day without moving the mind. Li Mu silently recited the key points of practicing the memory quenching divine decision, walked into the training room, sat cross-legged, and focused on practicing according to the guidance of the quenching divine decision. Time flies, day and night pass by. Zhao, Zhao. Are you at home? Old man Zhang's call came from outside the yard. Here we go, Mr. Zhang. Just a moment, you're coming soon. Li Mu responded and ran over to open the door. The courtyard door opened, revealing a handsome and mature young face. Zhao Xiaoge, you're getting more and more energetic. Oh. No, why are you refining the 5 layers of qi? Old Zhang greeted Li Mu with a smile, feeling the spiritual pressure emanating from him up close. He exclaimed in surprise and asked in confusion. He. A few days ago, I went to pick herbs with someone and luckily picked up a red spiritual fruit. After eating it, my cultivation improved. Didn't you notice yesterday? Li Mu chuckled and explained the reason for early numbering. Yesterday, I was busy harvesting spiritual rice and didn't pay attention. Zhao Xiaoge is really lucky. After saving 10 years of hard work, what does the red spiritual fruit look like? Where did you pick it up? Without the protection of demon beasts. Old Zhang was envious and looked at Li Mu nervously throwing out a series of questions. How could there be no demon beasts? The 2 demon beasts fought fiercely for the spirit fruit. I took advantage of their unpreparedness and picked one, then turned around and ran. The spirit fruit was the size of a baby's fist, bright red, near the Falling Soul Valley. Li Mu explained with a look of fear on his face. You actually went to the Falling Soul Valley, Xiaoming didn't want it anymore. Old Zhang's face changed slightly and he asked in shock. As soon as you hear the name Luohun Valley, you know its danger. It is located in a valley 30 miles east of Qingxuan town, between two spiritual mountains. It is shrouded in thick fog all year round and may harbor a high-order spiritual vein. There are often many rare spiritual medicines growing inside, and even a large number of first and second-order demon beasts growing inside. The reason why Qingxuan town has gathered many scattered cultivators and is valued by Qingxuan Sect is related to the rich spiritual medicines, demon beasts, and abundant cultivation resources. There are often hunters and cultivators who go into the Falling Soul Valley to collect spiritual herbs and hunt monsters. Similarly, many cultivators bury their bodies and souls in this valley. Over time, that valley has been given the terrifying name of the Falling Soul Valley. I'm so poor that I can't do anything about it. If I don't go into the mountains to collect some spiritual herbs and sell them, can I afford to pay for the ancestral rent? Li Mu smiled bitterly and explained. Upon hearing this, old Zhang suddenly lost interest in continuing this topic and let out a deep sigh. He had already decided to give up on cultivating immortality. How could he encounter such an opportunity and still not let it go? Zhao, I'm ready. Let's go handle the procedures for subletting the ancestral land. Mr. Zhang looked at Li Mu and pleaded. Li Mu nodded, locked the courtyard door, and helped old Zhang push the cart carrying the Lingmi towards Qingxuan town. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Xuanshui Jue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Xuanshui Jue. Qingxuan town, the residence of Emperor Xuanzong, is still bustling with a large number of spiritual cultivators queuing up to pay rent. It was finally Zhang Laotu's turn, Li Mu, and the others. Zhang Laotu paid the rent for 7 bags of Lingmi and immediately brought up the matter of subletting Ling Tian to the steward disciple. Kid, I recognize you. You already have 1 acre of spiritual field under your name. Can you handle managing 2 acres of spiritual field at the same time? The steward disciple looked at Li Mu and immediately recognized him, who was the kid who was forcibly purchased spiritual rice yesterday. No problem, just reduce your cultivation time, Li Mu replied with a smile. Okay. The steward disciple had nothing to say and arranged for them to sublet their ancestral land. In the contract drafted by the steward disciple, the name was signed, and the spiritual field rented under Mr. Zhang's name, as well as the courtyard he lived in, were officially sublet to Li Mu's head. Thank you, Brother Zhao. Let's go to the drunken master's residence. I'll treat you to a good meal, said old Zhang with a relaxed and enthusiastic expression. Then I won't be polite. Li Mu smiled happily, having been a simple person, he had never enjoyed the delicacies of this world. Sure, I'll tidy up the yard tomorrow and move out now. Old Zhang was extremely grateful to Li Mu and was about to take him to a tavern in the town to celebrate with a cart. There are countless Lingzifu who want to sublet Ling Tian these days. However, seeing Lingzifu's miserable situation at this time, no new person dares to enter the pit, and they can only continue to farm for the sect. Quickly, the two of them pushed the cart to the corner of the entrance to the drunken master's residence and entered the small tavern. Waiter, let's have a plate of steamed spirit fish with pine nuts, then stew a ginseng spirit chicken, make a plate of swimming river shrimp, and serve a pot of spirit rice. As he walked into the shop, old Zhang found a seat and sat down, boldly ordering dishes from the waiter. Zhao, what else do you want to eat? Just order whatever you want, don't be polite to me. After speaking, Zhang looked at Li Mu and asked. No need, no need. These are enough to eat. Li Mu quickly waved his hand and ordered ginseng spirit chicken and steamed spirit fish. After eating this meal, he was afraid he would need 10 lower spirits. Mr. Zhang is crazy. Don't worry, eat it. I'll treat you to this meal. When I return to the mortal world, I won't have the chance to taste these delicious spiritual foods in my life. Today, I want to have a good time. Mr. Zhang chuckled to himself and gestured. How could it be? In the future, if Mr. Zhang wants to eat, there will be plenty of opportunities. Li Mu didn't know how to comfort him, so he could only say perfunctorily. Mr. Zhang smiled and didn't want to continue the topic. Instead, he took out a burlap package from his arms and handed it to Li Mu, saying, "You've been wondering how long my clear wind and rain calling technique can last. Here's a book of techniques. Xuanshui Jue, as well as the experience of practicing clear wind and rain calling technique and the essential records of my cultivation of spiritual plants over the years. I've sent it to you. Why don't you take this precious inheritance back to the mortal world? Maybe future generations will have spiritual roots that can also be used," Li Mu asked with a hesitant expression. "Forget it. Bringing these things to the mortal world will only add to your troubles, and there may be a risk of death. I'll keep them safe for you. If my relatives and descendants discover the spiritual roots in the future, I'll let them come to you. At that time, you can help if you can, and it's okay if you can't help." Old Zhang pondered and looked at Li Mu's advice. Upon hearing this, Li Mu nodded and took the package, promising, "No problem. If any of your relatives or grandchildren come to me in the future, I will definitely take care of them." Haha. That's right. Waiter, why haven't the dishes been served yet? I'll have another pot of cooling wine. Old Zhang laughed heartily and turned to greet the waiter. Add a pot of cooling wine to table 3. Here, here. Your meal is here, sir. The waiter, who was serving the dishes on the plate, turned around and shouted to the shopkeeper from behind, quickly placing the dishes on the table. Soon, a table full of fragrance and spiritual energy was set up at the dinner table, and a pot of 10 pieces of green spirit wine with lower spirits tasted even more unique. The emerald green liquor is crystal clear, and it is emerald green. A cup of cooling wine entered the lower abdomen, with a strong sour and sweet aroma. The rich spiritual energy melted in his mouth, and Li Mu stimulated him. The spirit wine turned into warm currents flowing through his body, warm and warm, as if his soul had been sublimated at this moment. Good wine, refreshing. Old Zhang shouted happily, revealing a complex smile of satisfaction, mixed with regret, helplessness, and loss, as if bidding farewell to one part of his life, and as if picking up another kind of life. Li Mu couldn't understand Mr. Zhang's complex emotions, so he had to silently accompany him to drink. He even had some worries. Mr. Zhang was drunk and couldn't afford this meal. A pot of cooling liquor didn't have much, it looked like 3 or 4 ounces. Li Mu drank 2 cups, and the rest was consumed by Mr. Zhang alone. It was not until he occasionally discovered the effect of cooling wine that Li Mu regretted it. When you take cooling wine, your spiritual awareness is slightly improved. When you take cooling wine, your spiritual awareness is slightly improved. What situation? Cooling wine also has the effect of enhancing spiritual consciousness. Li Mu casually glanced at the character's light screen and saw a sudden log. He quickly looked at the only remaining cooling wine in his glass and stared at the wine. Quickly, the innate ability to recognize all spirits came into effect, and a line of information introduction appeared on the virtual light screen. Cooling wine, grade. First grade spirit wine. Features. Soothing the soul, providing slight spiritual power. Spiritual wine made from green spirit fruit, mesmerizing herbs, fermented and refined. Drinking it in moderation can enhance weak spiritual awareness and restore spiritual essence. Originally, cooling wine has the effect of enhancing weak spiritual consciousness. No wonder so many cultivators like to drink this spirit wine, and the price of cooling wine is so expensive. At this moment, Li Mu made up his mind to plant cooling fruit, and if there was a chance in the future, he would get the recipe for making cooling wine. Yesterday, Li Mu practiced the quenching divine technique all night and successfully introduced this skill to the character interface, with a proficiency requirement. However, the cultivation of the divine consciousness technique of quenching the divine mind is too difficult and requires time and effort to gradually refine. Sometimes, when the cultivation becomes distracted, the process is forced to end. Li Mu practiced all night, but he couldn't improve his proficiency in quenching divine decision, let alone feel the increase in divine consciousness power. If there were cooling wine to assist in cultivation, the progress of refining divine judgment, and the speed of improving divine consciousness should be greatly accelerated. Li Mu couldn't sit still at this thought. After being full of wine and food, old Zhang, who had paid the bill, was sent home. Li Mu returned to the yard and took out 2 bags of spiritual rice from the warehouse, preparing to take them to the market for sale. The spiritual stones he obtained were then used to purchase green spiritual fruit seeds. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Experience in treating diseases with spiritual plants. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Experience in treating diseases with spiritual plants. The next day, in the morning, Li Mu sowed the seeds of wind spirit grass in the spiritual field. Li Mu stood by the edge of the spiritual field, pinching the Dharma and releasing the technique of summoning rain with a clear breeze. A spiritual force was unleashed, and a clear wind emerged from above the spiritual field, causing a trickle of spiritual rain to fall. It lasted for more than 30 breaths. Li Mu couldn't help but smile, and finally increased the duration of the clear wind and rain calling technique, and the rainfall also increased significantly. Although it was thanks to Zhang Lao's technique experience, it was also due to the continuous use and accumulation of proficiency during this period, and the clear wind and rain calling technique was upgraded by 1 level. When the spirit rain summoned by the clear wind and rain calling technique stops, Li Mu continues to release it once and continues to water the spirit rain with the wind spirit grass seeds. To allow the seeds of the wind spirit grass to sprout and grow vigorously, in addition to the fertile land of the spirit field, it also requires abundant water. In the morning, middle, and evening, it is necessary to irrigate the spiritual field 3 times with spiritual rain to maintain humidity, so there is no need to do other work. The strong vitality of the wind spirit grass will compete with other weeds for survival space, and there is almost no pest damage. After watering the wind spirit grass, Li Mu went to another spiritual field and began to plow and fatten the field to prepare for sowing the green spirit fruit. Unlike the tenacity of the wind spirit grass, the root system of the green spirit fruit is not well developed and has high requirements for soil quality and fertility in the spiritual field. Brother Zhao. We're starting to sow now. At some point, old Zhang, who was carrying big and small bags, stood by the field, smiling as he watched Li Mu plow through the soil. Zhang Lao, are you leaving? Li Mu stopped his work. Let's go, it's better to leave early or late. I'll tidy up the yard for you, and you can do it yourself when you have time. In the future, build a fence to separate the road up and down the mountain, and this mountain is all yours. Old Zhang smiled and said goodbye to Li Mu. Zhang Lao, I'll see you off. Li Mu quickly stood up. No, you can continue working. Get along well, find a Taoist couple early, and build a cultivation family with you. Old Zhang waved his hand and smiled, blessing Li Mu. Then, bending his back, he left alone in embarrassment. Having been a spiritual cultivator for half his life, Mr. Zhang has already experienced the hardships of cultivating immortals. Li Mu now is like himself, who just entered the Qingxuan Sect, working hard in farming and hoping to turn over one day. However, these unqualified and inexperienced miscellaneous disciples are destined to only sell their labor for a lifetime, contribute to the cultivation of the sect, and have little opportunity to rise. Every year, new people constantly enter the Qingxuan Sect, and when they are drained of their physical strength and youth, old and weak, they are forced to leave, like an inevitable cycle of fate. Watching Mr. Zhang struggling with his luggage and leaving alone, Li Mu somehow remembered the old world of migrant workers who had worked hard in big cities but were unable to live in them and were forced to return to their villages without any support. Li Mu chuckled self-deprecatingly. If it weren't for a proficiency panel, his 5-element miscellaneous spiritual roots would have ended up in the same fate as old Zhang in his later years. Before nightfall, Li Mu quickly plowed through an acre of spiritual field, sowed the spiritual seeds of green spiritual fruits, and released 2 techniques to summon rain and clear wind. Only then did he complete the day's work. Li Mu returned to the yard and began cooking spiritual rice in front of the stove. In no time, a pot of fragrant spiritual rice was out of the oven. After enjoying it beautifully, Li Mu did not practice the Qingmu Ju, but closed his eyes and began practicing the quenching divine Ju. Cultivation can be improved through the natural talent of spiritual cultivation, so Li Mu was too lazy to focus on practicing martial arts and instead shifted his focus to the cultivation of pure divine decisions. After about an hour, Li Mu opened his eyes and completed the cultivation of the pure divine decision. Li Mu looked at the character log of the virtual screen. You have successfully practiced quenching divine decision, with a proficiency level of +1. Seeing this level of proficiency, Li Mu felt a bit frustrated. It only took him a little while to improve his proficiency, and it would take 3 months to waste time to upgrade the divine quenching decision from beginner level to first level, which would benefit his divine consciousness. This skill is too difficult to cultivate. I don't know what attributes can be obtained from the cultivation of Chui Ling Gua and Feng Ling Chao. If you can exchange your cultivation points for proficiency, it will be good for farming in the future. You don't need to work hard to cultivate these skills. Everything still had to wait for the test of time. Li Mu stopped imagining and sat at the desk specially designed for making talismans. He picked up the wolf talisman pen and began to draw the exorcism talisman. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, a month and a half have passed. The spiritual field where wind spirit grass is planted has excellent growth, thick roots and strong leaves, lush green, swaying with the wind. Li Mu pinched the magic formula and released a clear wind and rain summoning spell over the spiritual field, attracting a piece of rice-sized spiritual rain and completing the noon watering. Then, Li Mu walked towards another spiritual field, preparing to check the growth of Chui Lingua. During this period, there were 8 or 9 times a day when the clear wind and rain calling technique remained motionless. At the same time, Li Mu also introduced the cultivation of the Xuanshui technique and entered it into the character panel. With the blessing of spiritual power in the 5th level cultivation, the amount of rain summoned by the Qingfeng rain calling technique has significantly increased. Xuanshui Jue. At first, Li Mu didn't want to practice it because it was a skill that was at the same yellow level as Qingmu Ju. Li Mu despised it for being too low. End. However, in the experience recorded by Mr. Zhang, Xuanshui Jue was the key to increasing the amount of spiritual rain. Li Mu happened to be able to cultivate the 5 elements mixed spirit root, so he reluctantly introduced Xuanshui Jue to the beginner's level. Li Mu can now obtain cultivation points through spiritual cultivation, saving him the time of hard work to improve his cultivation. Practicing an additional skill will not waste much of his time. Not long after, Li Mu arrived at the spiritual field where Chui Lingua was planted and checked the condition of the seedlings. His brow furrowed tightly. Most of the seedlings of Quilingua are in good condition, but some of them have yellow leaves. They were fine yesterday, but they disappeared overnight. Li Mu gazed at the sickly cooling fruits and immediately understood the reason for their illness. Affected by evil spirits, the root system is partially blocked, and the plant has infectious diseases. After looking at the status attributes of several diseased cooling fruits, Li Mu suddenly became dizzy. Is this disease still contagious? Li Mu suddenly became anxious and ran back to the house, starting to rummage through boxes and cabinets, searching for books on spiritual cultivation, and seeking medical remedies. Li Mu couldn't find a cure for Chui Lingua's illness in the Lingji book left by the original owner. However, the book, Lingji's Treatment Experience, that Mr. Zhang gave him found a way to cure Chui Lingua's disease seedlings. First, use exorcism to eliminate diseased plants and the evil spirits near the spiritual field. Then, prepare nourishing water to irrigate and cure the diseased plants of Quilingua. Li Mu doesn't know exorcism, and there is no stock of Yuling water. He can only make another trip to Qingxuan town. Li Mu took a spirit stone bag, locked the courtyard door, and hurried to Qingxuan town. On the road, several cultivators with 6 or 7 levels of qi refining flew flying swords over Li Mu's head, making him envious. During this period, Li Mu diligently practiced his swordsmanship every day. Now, his swordsmanship has risen to level 2, but unfortunately, his cultivation is still slightly inferior and he is unable to fly his swords. However, the improvement in the 5 levels of gas refining is still very significant. Li Mu's pace was much faster, and it took him half the time to reach Qingxuan town, which was originally a 10-minute walk. After paying a broken spirit entry fee, Li Mujing walked towards the only martial arts shop in the town. End of this chapter.